The Goldsmiths Reform Program is something you may or may not have heard of, but either way it is affecting a whole ton of students. Goldsmiths University here in London is doing a reform program, which it already did over the summer. Essentially, it has affected every single student that attends Goldsmiths University, cutting employment of certain departments by half. This is something that every student at Goldsmiths is being affected by, whether they know it or not. It's something they also keep quite underground. The specific details of the entire reform program are something that they don't really talk about. With half of the teachers in my particular department being fired, 130 staff have been let go over the summer period. That's a quarter of all employment at the university itself. 54% of teachers in sociology itself has been let go. There are many different aspects that are happening across this reform program, but nobody really knows exactly what's going on and what's happening with it. It's gotten to the point that it's actually started to affect the enrollment, re-enrollment, and grading processes for every student. If you're a first year attending Goldsmiths, this might seem a bit odd to you. As a second year at Goldsmiths, it's extremely beyond bizarre. As a third year, it's just complete chaos. Marking for assignments has been put off all through summer due to the teachers having protests, which I don't blame them for. I had the privilege of speaking to some teachers about the whole reform program and what was going on with it. And it came down to some of the teachers have been moved into different departments. And the whole thing is just a cost-cutting measure. See, Goldsmiths went through a sort of transformation project a couple of years ago, which has plunged them dramatically into debt. And Goldsmiths, running university as a business, is failing. So the only way that they're managing to try and keep up is to cut things. They have managed to cut modules for every single department. When I say they've cut modules, they have completely eliminated and eradicated many of them. But they've made up for this in the worst way possible. In true Goldsmiths fashion, they have merged modules. They've introduced what are called elective modules, which is where any student from any different department can attend a specific module. For example, a computer science student may be put into an elective module about feminism and queer theory study. Now, what does that have to do with computer science? They're taking the teachers that cost too much and firing them, and giving the teachers that aren't costing much more work and the other teachers' workloads to do, which I don't blame the teachers for revolting against. In my specific department, we've lost half of our staff, and some of them have been moved around into different modules and lectures, and nobody really knows what's going on. In terms of cost cutting and gain, the university itself is hoping to gain £10 million from cutting jobs, but they're ruining the college and the experience for students and staff by doing it. They had financial mismanagement, which cost them £14 million. They've managed to recover £10 million from it, but they hope to gain an extra £10 million by cutting the jobs of the teachers. The transformation project is something that has bewildered people all over. But it's not just happening at Goldsmiths. This has also happened at Oxford Brookes and a bunch of other universities. Unfortunately, they run it as a business model, but not a very good one. The mismanagement that has happened around Goldsmiths itself is entirely bewildering, down to the point that I wasn't able to re-enroll, and several other people I know haven't been able to re-enroll. I've had issues with selecting my modules, receiving my grades, and for international students, this is a very big important thing. If they're not able to receive their grades and re-enroll within a certain time period, there are certain countries that these students are from that they will be revoked funding for the actually attending university. Worst case scenario, you can actually not receive any student funding. And if you're international and you've just moved to London, how in the world would you do that? I've been unlucky enough to experience people breaking down and crying and having complete meltdowns over this mismanagement. I myself have been fortunate enough to not have too many issues, but people that are very dear and close to me have had more issues than I can tell you. There are student protests that are happening every other week. There are meetings happening about it. There are some students that don't seem to care at all. But it's not possible to care too much about this reform program. Over time, it can be seen as the normal. But is the normal really what we want? Is the normal to, when things get hard, cut jobs and costs? Is the normal going to be to sacrifice a student's education? And the normal to be sacrificing the enjoyment and the experience of that university should be? I think not. The cuts have already been happening over the summer without many of us really realizing it. It wasn't until we actually managed to go back into university and aim to re-enroll or receive our grades that we became aware of how big of an issue this was. They've done it in the most grey area possible. There's a fantastic Instagram page called Students Against TTP, which you can go and follow and stay up to date with all of the information they're sharing. For any students currently at Goldsmiths having to experience this, I know it's the worst thing possibly imaginable at this current point in time. For me, myself, I'm having to go through it as well, and the mismanagement and chaos that is being caused by it is completely indescribable. For an extra example, they also cut the credits that we're giving per module. I signed up to do a module in which I would receive 30 credits, and on the day that I attended it was informed that it had now been cut down to 15 credits to be received by the end of that specific module. Hence meaning I have to take an extra module, if not an extra 2 modules, when it comes to summer term module selection. If they're ever able to accept a module selection, that is. For anybody struggling with it, I hope you do manage to get through it. The Instagram page is a really good one. The people there seem to be very friendly and helpful, and I wish everybody the best of luck. And if you're planning on coming to Goldsmiths, please make sure you do your research. The last thing you want is to be caught off guard.